race and was in the Atlantic hot on his heels as far as he knew. Of course, Crowhurst really wasn't speeding that fast. He wasn't all that motivated to get home fast.
No, he was dawdling, I believe would be the phrase to use there.
Yeah, but Tetley believed that Crowhurst was hot on his heels, and so he put on as much sail as he could. Tetley, by the way, was also in another 40-foot trimaran.
Okay.
So he put on lots of sail, and he found himself in a storm in the mid-Atlantic. He didn't shorten his sails nearly as much as he should have. And shorten your sails means you take in sail, you have less sail because you don't want to be demasted in a storm. Right? It's another sailing term. But so because of that, his trimaran was damaged in the storm and it started taking on water off the Azores, and the boat sank. He took to his life raft and he was rescued by rescue-type people.
Those people.
Yeah, air sea rescue, I assume people in helicopters. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so he was pulled out of the water May 30th, 1969. And, of course, Crowhurst still had a functioning radio, so when he heard the news that Tetley had sunk, well, that was really bad news for him, needless to say. His log entries about this point show that he was in a deteriorating mental state for the last several weeks of his log entries. And he wrote poems, random thoughts, philosophical ramblings. He put in fake and real log entries. And then in the final page of the log, which was entered on July 1, 1969, he wrote, and I quote, "It is finished. It is the mercy." That was all caps. "I will resign the game." So that was his last entry.
So wait, okay. I'm confused. Robin Knox Johnston arrived on April 22nd.
Yeah.
So why was Crowhurst going to win? Didn't Robin Knox Johnston already win?
Remember?
No, he won the Golden Globe.
It was getting there first and getting there fastest. Knox Johnston got there first, but Crowhurst potentially could get there in a shorter amount of time.
I see. It was two separate things.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. I get it. I've been laboring under false assumptions.
Yeah. Knox Johnston was in a monohull boat, which tends to be slower than a trimaran, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure he had a good pokey time. On July 10th, 1969, the Royal Mail vessel Picardy, crossing the mid-Atlantic towards the Caribbean, spotted the Tynemouth Electron drifting with only a single sail up. They boarded it, found the boat was cluttered and dirty with dirty dishes, filthy bedding, and no crew. Nobody to be seen. So the captain of the Picardy hauled the trimaran on board his ship, and they sailed on and started to read the 3 logbooks that they found on there. An air search was begun for Crowhurst. And, of course, the news of his disappearance spread worldwide and made him very famous. Of course, he was already kind of famous because a lot of people were following this.
Sure.
And, of course, lots of people reported sighting him at all kinds of places around the world, including the UK, Cape Verde, and everywhere else. And the British media for a time even staked out the family home, thinking he might show up there or something. And 2 days later, the captain of the Picardy was mostly through the logbooks. There were also other papers found on board the boat which showed the actual navigation course that he'd been following and not the fake logbooks. And so the captain reported what he found and also mentioned the suicidal sounding last entry, which leads you to think a certain thing, believe it or not. And the air sea rescue was called off. And the mystery of the ghost ship Tynemouth Electron lives on to this day. No one knows what happened to the crew of the Tynemouth.
The thing that I had a really hard time getting a hold of with this story, and it's
wrapping your head around.
Well, no, it's just what's not so apparent when you just read it is the amount of time that it takes place over.
Sailboats don't move fast.
No, and I watched. There's a great documentary on this called Deep Water. And I watched it. It's really interesting, and it really goes through a lot of it. But it really gave me the sense of how much time this whole thing took and how much time Crowhurst spent by himself at sea on that boat. I mean, when his boat was found, it was 240-some days out at sea by himself. That's a huge amount of time.
No, he went on land once.
Yeah, he did.
Sorry,
he wasn't supposed
smart
to.
aleck.
Yeah, speaking of spending a huge amount of time at sea, There's actually a book about a guy who took over 3 years to sail around the world.
Oh.
Yeah. And the book that I was going to recommend to you is called Sailing Alone Around the World by Joshua Slocum. Joshua Slocum is actually a quasi-famous guy. He was a New England sea captain, and he set out in April 1895 on his boat, the Spray, which was a 37-foot wooden sloop. And he sailed in a little more than 3 years and about 46,000 miles all around the world.
Was he by himself?
Yeah, he was by himself.
Wow.
He was by himself. Now, he didn't do it nonstop.
Yeah,
He didn't do it. Yeah, but
over 3 years, I would hope
Yeah.
he took land somewhere.
hopefully gave himself a little shore leave from time to time.
Yeah.
Hope
But,
so.
yeah.
But even that, I mean, ugh,
It's quite the adventure.
I bet.
Yeah, and all of this, I'm sure the accounts of his shore leave were probably really cool too. Yeah, I'm sure he was really ready to cut loose and kick up his heels after many, many months at sea. Go check it out now. Well, don't check it out now. Wait till we end the show, then check it out.
Yeah, we still have a
Just
lot
write
of
it
show.
down. Yeah. We still have a lot of show ahead of us because we got to talk about theories. What
Yay.
happened to Donald Crowhurst, and how did the Time with Electron become a ghost ship or a ghost boat? Yeah.
Or a ghost trimaran.
Yeah.
Or whatever, yeah.
So theories in no particular order. Theory 1 is pirates.
Sure.
Yeah. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I didn't find a whole lot of record of I did look for this. I actually thought about it. I didn't see a whole lot of records of pirates operating in that part of the sea in the late 60s. I couldn't find a whole lot of accountings of that.
It also just seems like super counterintuitive. Like it's not like there's a lot of stuff missing from the boat.
Well, actually,
It's not like the boat was missing. It was just this one broke dude.
Well, typically, pirates, like in the Caribbean, for example, pirates down in that area tend to, and it could be a similar bunch of pirates. They tend to kill the owner and throw his body overboard and take the boat itself.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And they did not do
my
that.
my
They
big
would have taken the boat.
issue.
Yeah.
So do you want to put the pirate theory to rest?
I kind of think so. Yeah.
Okay, well, that was short-lived. Next theory, and this has some plausibility. The next theory is that he fell overboard.
Yeah.
Which is entirely possible.
Yeah. Apparently, he had a propensity to fall overboard.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah.
He had to constantly do. I really, unfortunately, kind of lean towards this one heavily because of all the repairs that he was constantly doing. I know we didn't talk about it initially, but who was the guy that went on the early voyage with him?
Peter Eden.
Yeah, when Eden was with him, one of the issues that they were having is the screws that were holding the rudder to the boat continually were vibrating loose and falling out.
I don't even understand how that happens, though. Like,
brand new
what?
design, haven't figured it out. They're not locked in.
they're screws.
And what was the guy's name again?
Eden.
I'll remember it now.
He recommended welding
He
it.
recommended welding them. He's like, this is great, but if you want to take this voyage, you need to weld those down, which
And he
never
didn't?
happened.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And in his logs,
Even some super glue would have been helpful.
something, but in his logs, he talked about, lost the fourth screw today.
Uh-oh.
And
Yeah.
so I can just imagine him constantly being out there. When you're on your own and you're a little loopy from just being on your own, nothing else, just I've been in the sun for 200 days by myself, and you're just kind of spaced out, and you go to grab something as it's falling away, and then whoop, gone.
Yeah, and no way to get back in the boat.
And the boat just keeps going.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intelligent sailors, I think, tie themselves to the boat, right?
Usually people have lifelines that they attach to the boat, but even then, I mean, if you go overboard, it can be pretty tough to get back into the boat.
Sure.
I mean, it's entirely possible, but I don't think he was wearing a lifeline if he did fell overboard,
seem
because
like that,
it would have been there. I mean, his body still would have been there.
Yeah.
Well, and he did a lot of the guys that were on in this race, Montese and he both were given tape recorders and video recorders to just log what they were doing. And Montese and Crowhurst have a bunch of footage of themselves just tooling around on the boat, doing their everyday thing. They're in shorts, they've got no shirt on, they're in the sun, and I never saw a lifeline tied to anybody.
Yeah.
I would imagine that would be more cumbersome on a daily basis because you're walking back and forth and it's snagging and you go one way and then the other and it's just looped around. I can see that being a giant pain, which would explain why you wouldn't wear it all the time.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Heavy seas would be the only time I...
High propensity for falling overboard.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you've fallen overboard on like a small voyage 5 or 6 times, maybe like use your brain a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
Connect yourself to that thing that is the only thing that's keeping you alive.
But people get lazy when they get comfortable and used to something.
They do. It's true.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll give that some points. That's a strong possibility for that theory. Of course, the next theory, and this is the most prevalent theory out there, is suicide.
Yeah.
And certainly that's supported by the last logbook entry. Mm-hmm. Although you could interpret that plausibly. He said, I will resign the game. You could interpret that as him just saying, I'm going to drop out of the race.
Or he's going to admit to everything.
Or possibly
he knows that
clean.
He's going to get busted.
Yeah, it could be that. Or it could be by resigning the game, it means he's going to off himself. It's hard to say. I mean...
Yeah, it's especially hard to say since like I haven't read any of his other log stuff, like what the kind of tone of it, you know, you can kind of get a sense of stuff like that sometimes. But
yeah, but here's why I don't really believe the suicide thing entirely. I mean, it's still possible, but if it were me and I was going to commit suicide, and of course he probably wasn't entirely in his right mind.
Right.
But he left a lot of evidence behind that he basically lied the whole time. And, you know, of course you want to think about what your reputation is going to be beyond the grave. You want to think about that. And if it had been me, I would have checked the logs and all the other documentation overboard so there would have been no evidence.
I swear I saw somewhere that, and this is in line with the suicide theory, is that somebody had said that he had taken one of the logbooks with him overboard, which I could never really substantiate, and also question, how do you know?
Exactly. I've heard that too, that they thought he took a log, but how do you know that?
I mean, did the spine of the logbook say logbook 1, 2, 4, and so you know number 3 is missing?
Yeah,
maybe.
You know.
Or
I don't know.
dates in the logs, maybe, if you've just got a big
gap.
chunk.
There's a gap in
but then
there.
you still don't know because, I mean, it's also just possible that he just didn't keep logs for a gap of time.
It's also possible that at some point he accidentally dropped it overboard.
Yeah.
He had it on him when he fell over. He got back in the boat and it didn't go.
Yeah.
But as far as suicide goes, on the other hand, he did have a pretty strong motivation because not only was he going to be financially ruined, he was going to be humiliated and exposed as a liar. And also he was probably feeling a little bit guilty about Nigel Tetley, because Nigel Tetley arguably wouldn't have sunk if not for him.
Yeah.
So maybe he was feeling a little remorseful about that. And so maybe all those things combined to drive him to suicide.
Yeah, and I know he had a lot of hesitation. I mean, if it wasn't for the contract that he had to sign, from what I've seen, I get the feeling that he would have never set sail, because I think it was the 30th of October, the day before he left, he went to his financier and his publicist and said, this boat's not ready. This boat's not ready. I can't take this boat out. And they both looked at him and said, what do you mean? You have to go. You have to go. It's too late to back out. And, you know, it's a rock and a hard place.
He was in a tough spot.
It's a terrible spot.
Well, he did put himself there. I mean...
Well, yeah, he did, but I still feel bad for the guy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
It's heart-wrenching because, of course, he was married and
had a couple of kids.
4 kids, 3 or 4 children.
Well, and I think I read somewhere that the guy who ended up with the money,
Tetley won the prize.
Tetley ended up with the money.
No, not Tetley. Knox Johnson.
Oh, Knox Johnson. That's right. He's the only one that made it back.
Yeah, he's the only one that made it back.
And didn't he give most of it to the children of...
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Which was awfully nice of him.
Yeah, and even after it came out that, you know, he was kind of a liar and all that stuff,
well,
the money was never, I mean...
You got to feel bad for the family,
yeah,
you know,
do.
because they've lost their husband and father, and on top of that, he's getting a lot of really bad publicity.
Yeah.
Well, and I imagine, I mean, it's just like anybody who becomes a public figure like that, you know that there's 2 frames of mind. Either I know I'm going to make a bunch of money from this in other avenues, so I'm going to give this away knowing that I'm not going to be hurting in the long run because I'll make money on other ventures, or there's, as you guys said, the magnanimous perspective of, yeah, my winning doesn't matter because of this other tragedy that happened. I mean, it's hard to say what motivated him. I'm glad he did it because it was a great thing to do.
Oh, it was, yeah. And I have no idea. He might have been independently wealthy anyway. So, who knows? Well, okay, do you guys have any more thoughts on the suicide theory?
No.
Okay, last theory. This theory is that there is a seagoing chupacabra. Yeah. This seagoing chupacabra is called the Kraken.
Oh. Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so there's a school of thinking that perhaps the Kraken got him. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Just reached up, plucked him off the boat, and took him away?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Actually, probably what it did is it grabbed the boat in its hairy paw, turned it upside down, and shook him out of the boat into its mouth, and then gently set the boat back down.
And he was the only thing that fell out.
Well, that would explain why the one logbook was gone, too, because it fell out, too.
Yeah, but none of the dishes or anything.
No, that's true. Good point, yeah.
They weren't broken.
And yeah, good point. Okay, so much for that theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? I always like to bring things out of left field. Here's the one theory that I've never come across that I wonder about. His boat was found in the Atlantic, and it was, 100 miles from the Azores? Is that correct?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was about 100 miles when that ship found it on the 10th.
Yeah.
It was about 100 miles away from the Azores, which is just a string of islands that kind of, I don't even know how far they're 800 miles off the coast of Spain, but it's still a relatively temperate area.
Oh, yeah.
And he's already broken the rules once and gone ashore. So I could conceivably see him writing this this log entry saying the game is up, going to an island and just pushing the boat off and because the boat was found with a sail up. So I could see where he just said,
I'm going to just start a new life.
I'm just going to start a new life. I'm just going to walk away. I'm sorry for my wife and family, but the hell with this. I'm out. I just can't take this anymore. And maybe it's because those islands are so small and they're small communities that this might just be completely wrong, but I just wonder about that because he wasn't that far off, and in his course, when he found out about Tetley, he hung a right-hand turn and started heading in that direction rather than continuing north to England.
So, yeah, I mean, the Azores is a possibility, but, I just don't know. The only problem that I have with that theory is that he could start over with nothing in the Azores, or he could go home and start off with nothing again and be with his family. And so,
but if he went home, he would be returning in disgrace. He would lose everything he had, and if he chose to disappear and not return home, his family would likely have some kind of, he probably had life insurance or something like that. Something, it's not. It protected his family financially a little bit, gave them a little more something.
Yeah.
And it protected him because you can take on a new name and nobody knows what a dipstick you were and what a foolish mistake you made. You can hide from that.
Actually, everybody knows that because they've read the logbooks that you foolishly left in the sailboat.
But no, everybody that he meets from then on forward, he's not going to operate under this stigma of, oh, you don't do business with Crowhurst. He's a liar. He tries to pull the wool over your eyes. He can just be, some random dude who shows up on the island and hires on with a ship and just goes about his business and just, he's free of it. It washes his hands.
Yeah. No, the only problem I have with that theory is I still think he would have sanitized the boat. He would have taken the incriminating stuff out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that he should have.
Should have
I would think that he would have.
Way to say that.
Because if he set the boat up, he would want people to think that he just was washed overboard or fell overboard. Yeah, and so
that's fair. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah,
but sanitizing the boat, I don't know that wouldn't look more suspicious.
That would look kind of funny too.
If he had done the laundry and washed all the dishes and all of that, would that have stood out to us in history as stranger than the cabin was a wreck?
No. I meant sanitize as in removing incriminating materials.
Yeah.
Like the logbooks and charts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's
stuff
that that showed the entire world that he had been lying this entire time.
But would it have looked? But that's the thing. Again,
it would have looked bad too.
They
if all
know
that stuff
how
was
many
gone.
logbooks he left with.
Well, I guess the thing you do in that situation is you just throw almost everything that was on the ship overboard and make it look like you got hit by a huge wave. It washed
everything out.
Everything out. It's reasonable that there was, not a whole lot that survived or whatever, and just go about your merry way.
Yeah, I mean, there's plausible excuses for that. I took on a bunch of water with a sneaker wave, half filled the cabin, and I had everything out on deck drying out, and then another sneaker wave came along and washed it all overboard. Of course, he's not there to explain all this.
Or you dunk them in the water and lay them out to dry, and they're so, crinkled and the ink is all runny and everything that nobody can decipher what you were writing, but... I don't know. There's ways to do it. There's ways to cover your tracks.
And that's the hardest part with this is it's so easy for us to armchair quarterback that and come up with better ways to do it. But again, 200 and some odd days on your own.
Yeah.
And granted, you've got a lot of time to think through this, but I think you have a lot of time to think through this and then think through it again and again and just drive yourself batty.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sounds like that's what happened to him.
Yeah, it's sad. I feel bad for the guy. Well, okay, so much for that theory. So maybe, who knows?
It's tough to say.
Any other theories?
No, that was the only other thing I had was the Azores.
Yeah, there's not too many theories on this one. But I did want to say one last thing. What's really sad is that he had a way out. I mean, he didn't have to kill himself, if indeed. I'm kind of torn between falling overboard and killing himself.
I was going to say, that makes me think
motivation.
you lean towards the suicide theory.
If he committed suicide, then he didn't have to do it. He could have actually, there was a way that he could get back to England, fool everybody, and not be disgraced, which is all he had to do was scuttle his boat.
Yeah.
That's all he had to do.
Oh, that's true.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's so true. Everybody else was doing it. Why didn't he?
I know. I mean,
it's all the cool kids are doing it.
He doesn't get the money, but...
Yeah, I mean, his only problem was he didn't have a radio transmitter. That had conked out. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but his radio... He ceased radio transmissions, but it turns out when they found the boat, the transmitter wasn't working. So at some point... This was after he sent a couple of transmissions saying he was headed back up the Atlantic, but apparently it stopped working.
It actually did stop working.
Yeah, so he couldn't get a distress call out. But that's easily solved because all he needed to do was head towards, say, the coast of North Africa or maybe Portugal, Spain, somewhere. Get close. Get to within maybe just barely sight of land, stuff a bunch of provisions, make sure the wind and watch that thing go down.
And he did have a lifeboat on board.
And he had a lifeboat
the inflatable.
on board.
Yep.
And so the thing is he could have done that. Of course, in the mayhem of the boat sinking, it's like I didn't have time to grab the logbooks, and so he just barely escapes with his life. And nobody ever. These people might be a little suspicious, but nobody will ever be the wiser. And he's not disgraced. He doesn't lose his house and his business. That's all he had to do.
Gosh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
I feel foolish because I went off the deep end with the Azores, but that's a much simpler answer.
Yeah.
That would have been, that would have been the way to do it. And frankly, but, and this is another reason to lean towards falling overboard or being washed overboard is that, I'm kind of surprised if he chose to kill himself that he didn't scuttle the boat because same thing. He winds up in the drink and drowns, but he leaves all the damning evidence behind. But if he'd sunk the boat and drowned himself, then everybody would just assume that he'd been lost at sea, and he would be kind of a national hero instead of being disgraced as he was.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So it kind of seems like he was just washed overboard or fell.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say because, it didn't occur to you guys to scuttle the boat. Maybe it didn't occur to him either.
Yeah.
It occurs to Joe because he scuttles boats all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sometimes you gotta just, pour gasoline all over everything.
No.
Did I say that? Damn it. Yeah. So anyway, too bad. I hope this has like confused all of our listeners. Yeah, so write us your thoughts and tell me now that you've thought this all carefully through with us. What do you guys think? And if you want to write us an email, of course you do. Contact us at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. Find us, like us, leave us comments. We have a group also besides a page. You can find us on iTunes and download all of our podcasts from there. And if you do download our stuff, please stop and leave a rating and leave a comment or two if you wish to also. That'd be great. Find us on Stitcher. And hopefully Stitcher isn't truncating our episodes still like they were. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's fixed.
Is it fixed? I hope so, yeah. But find us on Stitcher and stream us directly. You can also find us on Twitter. And follow us on Twitter, and we tweet all kinds of amazing stuff.
That's not true.
Well,
he's lying to you.
Yeah, actually, we don't. we do regularly put cool stuff on our Facebook page, but yeah, we're not doing a lot of tweeting.
Just
interacting. Yeah. And last of all, if you're boycotting iTunes and Stitcher, and I know a lot of you are, then you can also find our episodes on our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. And, of course, you will find links to all the research that we did, or at least some of the research. Sometimes we like to keep some of it covert.
Yeah.
But you'll find some links to some of these stories out there. So, okay. Well, anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you folks enjoyed listening. So, for Thinking Sideways Podcast, ta-ta.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply. What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Well, hi there. Welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. We're the guys who tackle unsolved mysteries and solve the heck out of them.
Guys!
We're the guys and girls.
Gang.
Sorry.
Gang.
Yeah. So I am joined, as always, by...
Devin.
And...
Steve.
Yeah. And so let's just dive headfirst into another mystery. Okay, before I forget, this is a listener-suggested episode, so I want to give a big shout-out to Ash from England. Thanks, Ash.
Wait,
Okay.
if we're a gang, do we have hand signs?
Duh.
We have hand signs, we have colors, we have guns.
Yeah, it's like this. And then this one.
Oh, the question mark thing with the finger. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
And there's the bird. Okay. All right, so our mystery this week, Dorothy Arnold. Some of you may have heard of Dorothy Arnold. This is actually 100 years ago, kind of a huge thing. It got worldwide publicity. Let me talk a little bit about her. Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold was
That's
the
a
daughter.
name. Let's talk about that.
I know Grandma and Grandma's names or something like that. Yeah, her mother had like 5 names. That's kind of a rich people thing, I think. But anyway, she was the daughter of Francis and Mary Arnold. Francis Arnold was a stinking rich perfume importer. They lived in a very posh Manhattan house just a block east of Central Park. Very nice part of town. They were listed in the Social Register, which is a big deal for rich people. You guys have probably heard of the Social Register, right?
Oh, I'm on it.
Yeah, oh, you're on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not.
Totally.
1%er. Dorothy was a socialite. And the definition of socialite is, quote, someone who was well known in fashionable society and spent a significant amount of time participating in social activities such as parties and other fashionable events. That's from Wikipedia. Now, parties, by the way, which none of us ever get invited to.
Well, Steve does, obviously.
Yeah, apparently.
Because
From
he's on
highfalutin and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. On
You know,
the Social Register.
I've decided to screw the mystery. I'm going to spend the next hour just ranting about the 1%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
All right.
How about you?
No,
No?
Oh.
You want a
please.
mystery?
I think that's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's solve the mystery then. Back to Dorothy. On Monday, December 12th, 1910, so 104 years ago, Dorothy left the family house in the morning, saying that she was going to go shopping for a dress.
For her
sister. Yeah.
sister's debutante.
Yeah, again,
ball.
more rich socialite stuff. She was.
It wasn't even her debutante ball.
Yeah, exactly. So she had to obviously go buy a new dress
Oh,
for that.
of course.
Yeah. Anyway, she left the house to go shopping, and the family never saw her again. And this was a huge deal. I mean, got a lot of publicity, and everybody was wondering what happened.
Yeah, it was
to
all
Dorothy.
over the newspapers.
Oh yeah, the family and their investigators were able to piece together her trail, at least some of her trail, of where she went before she disappeared. So first off, she went to a store at 27th and 5th Avenue.
Can we talk
Bought
about
chocolates.
New York and the way that they do streets and how confusing that is?
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
please, yes, because I
like,
still
yeah,
see
I
this,
know.
and it still confuses the heck out of me.
at 27th and 5th. What?
Yeah, I know.
It's avenues run one way and streets run the other. Is that
yeah.
correct?
Yeah, kind
well,
of
I
like
don't know.
Vancouver, you know. You guys have been to the Coup.
Nope.
You haven't been
Washington?
To the Coup?
Oh.
Vancouver, Washington?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
Is it-
that.
So it's
That way
I
too?
don't know which one is north south and which one is east west, but it is
Yeah.
avenues one way and streets the other. So
think-
I could literally be on 5th and 5th potentially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's so dumb.
I know, it is kind of dumb, but it is what it is. I don't think they're going to change
We've
for
just
us.
enraged so many New Yorkers
Yeah,
The way Portland does it is so much better.
I know.
with
Fighting
names
words.
of people that nobody knows.
That's okay.
Yeah, I know. Well, so anyway, I've taken the liberty of printing up this map, which I got off of Google, so you can see up in the upper right-hand corner where she started from, and the place where she went to buy. She stopped at the store and bought half a pound of chocolate, which is down here, and,
Which is 27th and 5th.
yeah, and that's 2.5 miles away, so she could hoof it. But I didn't mention, by the way, Dorothy was 25 and apparently liked to walk. So she headed south 2.5 miles and then headed back north to a bookstore.
But, like, that's an hour walk, really.
Yeah,
it's not
not
bad.
that big of a
Not
deal.
bad.
Yeah.
You've got a day.
Yeah.
You just walk.
Yeah, she's not in a huge hurry or anything.
So she bought a half pound of chocolate.
Bought half a pound of chocolate, and then she went to a bookstore. The bookstore is Brentano's, which, by the way, was in an episode of Seinfeld. It was actually a New York landmark bookstore for many, many years before it got absorbed by Borders, and I assume Borders is out of business by now. But
Almost, if
Yeah.
not.
Actually, yeah, I can't think of the last time I saw a brick and mortar Borders.
yeah,
No.
Barnes and
I can't.
Noble's somehow still around. Borders.
Yeah, I think I've seen Borders in malls, and that's the only place I've seen them, and that was years ago.
This episode
Yeah.
of Thinking Sideways podcast brought to you by Borders.
No, brought to you by defunct bookstores.
yeah. That'll be our next mystery. Is where did all the bookstores go?
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, so she stopped at this bookstore and bought a book by somebody you'd never heard of, Jane Calvin something. I did a Google on her. I couldn't find anything. But anyway, apparently she was popular 100 years ago. But she left a paper trail at these stores because she charged her purchases to the family accounts.
Okay.
Both places, right?
Yeah. She had kind of a sweet deal. Her family, of course, as I said, was stinking rich. She got $100 in a monthly allowance, which is the equivalent of $2,440 today, in today's dollars. And she had to pay didn't have to pay any rent, didn't have to pay utilities, didn't have to pay for food. Plus, she could go out shopping and charge things to the family account. So
Yeah.
she just
On
had,
top of her allowance.
on top of that $100 allowance.
She had, I
That's a
think I
sweet
saw,
deal.
I saw a mention that she had $30 or $40 in her possession at that
Yeah,
time,
I
right?
think the family estimated
Said
she left the
that's what
house
she
with
had.
25 to 35 bucks.
Well, yeah, I remember reading this. She had a day or two before gone out with friends, and I think she took her friends to a movie, and then they had gotten food afterwards, and she had gone to the bank and gotten $36 out of the bank, which seems like such a funny number to us today, but then was obviously a large sum of cash.
That was probably $700 or $800.
Right,
Those
and
days.
then they knew how much she should have approximately spent at these locations, so they figured she had about $25
Give or
currency
take.
at for that time period on her, which
Yeah.
again is a pretty decent sum of money. It's a couple $100.
Yeah, but it's not like, run away to the hills, like,
No.
finance the rest of your life money
No.
either.
No, not quite.
So,
Yeah.
it's that weird middle ground.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah. More on that later, but okay. Anyway, so after the bookstore, outside the bookstore, she ran into a friend of hers named Gladys King, and they chatted for a bit, parted ways, and this was at about 1:45 in the afternoon, according to Gladys. And that was the last time she was seen by anybody who knew her.